Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Elevate, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Well, hello and welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. We're excited for a great episode today, talking with the best around all things events and planning for the year ahead. We know that we are sitting here in a time with a lot of unknown, and there's a lot of potential changes coming to the sector, coming to our communities, and we know more than ever the importance of being in community together, taking care of each other, and as we plan for our gatherings, thinking about how our gatherings are building movements and centering the community that we support in ethical ways that bring stories forward in a way that supports our growth and supports our continued evolution. So we're excited to be joined today by the team at the Fundraising Event Co, where we're going to talk all about the things that we learned in the last fundraising season, what's working, tips and tricks. But before we begin, we want to make sure everyone knows that we have Elevate coming up. It's our 2-day planning conference that is all about fundraising events. We are dedicating Elevate this year to really diving into the importance of building movements and building communities through our gatherings. We have our scholarships available. We want to make sure everyone knows about our friends at On Point have made scholarship funding available to attend March 12th and 13th in our hybrid event that you can join in person in Portland, or you can travel and join us, or you can tune in online via our broadcast. So we hope that you will put it on your calendar. We hope you will go check it out. You can go to swaimstrategies.com and check out the conference and get registered today. But as we dive in, we have some of our speakers that will be at the conference, the Fundraising Event Company, and the experts that are in the work every day helping nonprofits to lift their fundraising events. So, Kristen, why don't we go ahead and introduce the team?
Let's do it. The Fundraising Event Company, a subsidiary of Swaim Strategies, is focused on the production and planning of nonprofit fundraising events. Their team of experts partners with nonprofits to bring people together and create transformative experiences through hybrid, virtual, and in-person events. They are strategists, thought partners, storytellers, and advocates working to lift voices, build community, and create access with easy-to-implement tools and resources. We are here today with CEO Mary Elizabeth, VP of Project Management and Client Relations Ryan Goodwin, and Creative Director Jenna Watanabe. Between them, they have over 20 years executing nonprofit fundraising events. We're excited to have them here today to share what they saw on the ground in the fall fundraising season so that they can bring their wisdom to you and you can implement it for spring fundraising and events coming up. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, we're super happy to be here.
Awesome. So opening question, I want to kick it to each of you. What is the biggest shift you saw in fall 2024 fundraising? Mary, let's start with you.
Yeah. So something that we saw in 2024 was that we saw less attrition in guest attendance, right? So we used to see something like 20% attrition, meaning people say they're coming and then they decide they can't come or they aren't able to. But this year, we really saw people devoted to the organizations that they were involved with and wanted to really be there. We may have gotten some late confirmations, but the people who wanted to be there and who said they were going to be there were there. So they really wanted to be in space together and learn more about the organization that they're supporting.
I love that.
So that was great.
That's a good thing for folks to hold space for, especially in that moment when they're like, oh my God, we still have all these tickets to sell, that maybe the decisions are coming a little later, but there might be firmer decisions.
Exactly.
Interesting. Ryan, how about you?
Thanks, Kristen. I think first, as an observation, transactional giving still hasn't rebounded. I think that's something we are seeing as a carryover from last spring as well. But I think the big shift in the fall is sponsorship has been harder to come by. And the folks that have really succeeded in that have leaned into already formed relationships from previous years.
Yeah.
And or they've been really listening to the priorities of the corporate partners around what are meaningful benefits to them.
Yeah. I'm wondering, can I ask a follow-up to that? Are you finding that timeline on sponsorships is helping impact that as well? Meaning if you are soliciting sooner, meaning that earlier, earlier in advance of the event, that folks have more runway and are having more success?
Yeah, I think time as a commodity always benefits. I think the big thing is you can get into the planning cycle for their budgeting, which usually happens in November and October of the previous year. So that definitely helps. We're just not seeing a lot of space for new relationships or new asks around sponsorships right now.
Yeah, and I think the hope there too is that folks don't feel daunted by that.
Yeah.
I think sometimes acquisition addiction translates over into sponsorships where it's like shiny, shiny, shiny. Let's get all these new people when in fact it's the folks already in your stead and continuing to cultivate those partnerships. That's where success lies.
Absolutely.
Jenna, what is the biggest shift you saw?
I would have to say there are two things.
Great.
The way that nonprofits are telling stories. And recently I came across this term that I saw floating around on social media, but it's actually from a book called The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows by John Koenig. And the term is sonder. And it's basically, what it means basically is everyone has a story. It's a noun that the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. And I think that I'm seeing nonprofits evolving the way that they tell stories. I see them leading a lot more in spaces where they used to talk about their clients or their participants with a deficit language.
Mm-hmm.
They're using a lot more strengths-based language. And so that's been really heartening to see. I think that it's encouraging donors as well to sort of embrace that idea of sonder, the power of sonder, and thinking of it in terms of, we're all just humans with very rich, diverse experiences and resources.
Yeah.
And so let's look at ways that we can make sure that that's a little bit more equitable. The second thing is when it comes to the event program, donors are really, really liking the shorter program because it gives them time and space to visit with each other before and after. And I think that especially this year, that's going to be more important than ever.
Yeah. I love that idea of sonder, especially because I feel like in the field of both decolonizing fundraising and ethical storytelling, that creates an equivocation and a balance from the jump for everybody. That's really, really critical to both of those pieces. I love that.
Yeah. It's an interesting juxtaposition to the political landscape right now, too, right?
Absolutely.
To be so intentional and thoughtful about doing away with really patriarchal language and really thinking about strengths-based language. Well, I want to know a little bit about some strategy. And I know, Ryan, you've been in the deep details of some strategic planning with a lot of folks. As we look at the year ahead and we see the importance of bringing people together as really a galvanizing force around mission, what do you feel like are some of the more critical elements to do that?
I think first and foremost, it is actually the gathering of the unquantifiable effects of bringing folks together in one space in one single time. I think the importance of that can't be underscored. Past revenue and all sorts of other metrics, just that connection piece is so important. And then the critical elements, sorry, Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I think some of the critical elements that we're thinking about with our clients right now is to think about speaker diversity as a big way to keep the program moving forward from the stage. Moments of surprise and delight, because when don't we need more joy?
Yes.
And I want to just reemphasize Jenna's point around humanizing storytelling. I think that really has an impact, especially when we think about how we're constructing the organizational speakers' speeches. And then the last thing I want to bring up is let other folks talk to your benefits. Find third-party validators, bring them into the stage program, let them sing your praises for you.
I think to that point, there's a real value in thinking about who's in your room. And when you think about the power of gathering and bringing folks together, we are more inclined to take care of each other, listen to each other, be in community actively when we're allowed to be in those conversations together. So I think thinking about who's in your room is a really powerful way, especially who's on your stage, who's bearing the message. I'm curious as a follow-up to that about event timing. I heard less attention, shorter programs. So if we're seeing those attention spans shrinking, what advice do you have for developing a program that really keeps people attentive?
I mean, I think it goes back to some of the basics that we've been talking about with event production for a long time. If we're really relying on that window of attention being 75 to 90 minutes, then every second that we are talking from stage counts.
Yeah.
So how do we center the storytelling? How do we keep a clear message that's digestible? And one of the best ways to do that is script to the word. I know that's something that we've been singing from the hills for years, if not decades, but the importance of scripting to the word allows all of the important messages to be delivered without anyone going off into the forest on a side quest from stage that's just pulling folks away.
I want to underscore, I think, two things that you said that are both revolutionary and revolutionary for folks. So one, 75 to 90 minute program. 75 to 90 minute program. It's interesting. The more we keep talking to folks, it is still a revolutionary concept. I mean, people are still taking 45-minute dinner breaks. Breaks in the middle of action, right? So I want to underscore that. And then, Ryan, I love at the top when you were talking about gathering itself and that being a potentially revolutionary act for an organization, because we are taping it today on Giving Tuesday. Our inboxes are full. That is one mode of fundraising when people are looking at their calendar of touches for donors and what that looks like. But we've said this also from the hills forever. Events are a unique opportunity. There's energy that happens in a room. There's biomechanics and neurology and all of these things that happen in a room when people are gathered. And so when you're going to hold an event, get behind that and get behind all the tools of that event.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to, or that feels overwhelming, you may have to have a conversation about what that looks like for you and your organization.
Well, and you just said 75 to 90 minutes. I would push on that and say, go shorter.
Totally. Absolutely.
Like, push on the boundaries of even how you can make it so tight and so succinct.
Yeah.
We saw one event this past fall that had a 15-minute program, and it was very effective. They did not have any dinner service until after the program.
Yeah.
And the rest of the event was that gathering, was that connection, was that community. So I think there is importance in telling your story, but if you are specific about those stories and you're intentional about those stories, you can do it in a really powerful way in a very tight program. I'm curious though, in that particular frame, we had a huge tail on the back end of the event, right? Our program was short, dinner service, and then we had this big after party. A lot of organizations for a very long time have used after parties as a way to have the continuation, the celebration. Ryan, you said joy. The importance of joy is so important. How are you seeing that sort of after party evolve as the need for the program to be tight becomes a priority for folks?
It's been an interesting evolution. I think there's a couple pieces at play here that I wanted to bring to the table. First, there's still folks that have an appetite to stay and socialize or celebrate or have joy or find connection. I think it comes in different ways, and I think that we need to plan different spaces at the event to encapsulate that.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of folks still want to lean into a dance party or music or live music afterwards, and that's been appreciated by folks. But it's also been appreciated by folks to have a separate space away from that to continue the conversation that happened, before dinner. So having those separate spaces and just acknowledging the fact that folks want to be in space in different ways feels really, really important. If you don't let folks have that choice, by and large, folks are going to want to move on with their life and take off from the event. So that's something we've really been leaning into this fall with our clients is if there is a live music entertainment aspect after the program, how do we still create a space for other folks to stay and continue that conversation potentially away from that musical piece?
I want to dive into that for a second because you have a really great example that you all worked on this past fundraising event season where the staff of the organization is quite large, several hundred people. And if they had invited the entire staff and their guests to attend the event, they would have a very full ballroom of their staff and not any other guests at the event. Can you talk a little bit about how the after party became a tool for inclusion?
Sure. It gave a huge swath of the staff a way to come and engage in the event. So they arrive. We start the after party about a half an hour before the program wraps, and it's an environment that's welcoming, like they were expected to be there at that time. And the client staff comes and starts the party basically, and then as the program ends and guests filter down, they join into the party that's already been started. So it's been a lovely way for very little change in cost to have a huge thank you and gratitude bomb for the staff that are doing the work that just potentially from a room perspective couldn't be upstairs at the main program.
I love that.
It's great. Jenna, let's talk a little bit about the program and what's happening on stage. So what elements right now are you seeing as critical for executive directors or that organizational voice to be speaking to from their time with their time on stage?
So many things.
I know.
I will start with, we have been just kind of rallying around this idea with programs that people are going to remember 2, maybe 3 things from your program.
Yeah.
And
very good point.
Yes. So even if it's 45 minutes, 15 minutes, 75, 90 minutes,
right,
they're only going to remember 2 or 3 things. So my first piece of advice is to actually start as early as possible. The best time to start, I think, is like 10 to 12 months before your event. Because if
planning.
Start planning and start thinking about storytelling. That's one of the first things I would say to think about, because when you get 3 to 4 months from your event, you're going to need that brain power for other stuff. Yeah. And if you think early, you can use a lot of those creative juices and, put it into something that will actually take form at your event. As for what to talk about, so if you have a video that tells your organization's story, and you have a video that tells a story of impact of what your mission does, the executive director speech or the CEO speech goes really nicely in between those, because then you have an opportunity to connect those 2 pieces. I think what we've seen is really successful and resonating. It's not going to be surprising, is humanizing them, right? Yeah. What is a CEO or executive director's personal connection to the mission? Because they always have one. Yeah. And sometimes it's not just one. They have multiple ways that they connect to the work that they do. And maybe it changes depending on that year and what's happening. So if you can highlight that and bring it in, anytime you can sandwich anything in a story, it's going to be more memorable. So I've been encouraging people to think about what your unique connection is, speak to your passion when it comes to the mission, and then just make sure that you're honoring, other people's connections too, by not sharing them, but inviting them to share them if they would like to. Yeah.
Do you want to say that again?
Yes. So when it comes to ethical storytelling, one of the things I think that we all agree on, and I don't usually do this and speak for other people, but we say one of the best ways to uphold ethical storytelling is to let people tell their own story. Don't tell it for them. Yeah. And I know that's hard to do because, especially in nonprofits, we come across so many amazing stories from people's connections to their experiences, and we want to share it because, again, we're wired for stories. Yeah. But when it comes to someone's, experiences, they probably don't want to necessarily be remembered just for that one thing, right? And it's not necessarily your experience to tell. But if you want to give them a platform to do it, we love that. Yeah. So the other thing I want to say is practice makes perfect. I kind of mentioned this on our last episode, but less is more. I was actually reading something that said speech writing is a lot like songwriting. So you want to think about like melodic sentences, but try and be punchy and keep folks interested so that they're still listening. I also came across this motivational speaker. His name's Vin Jiang, and we actually share some of his clips if you want to follow us on Instagram or LinkedIn at Fundraising Event Co. But he had this really great tip for anyone that's giving any kind of public speech, and it's record and review. And he said, when you record and review, take a video of yourself delivering your speech. Don't watch it immediately. Wait until the next day, because that day you're going to be very critical. Just wait. The next day you watch it, don't actually watch it. Just listen. Listen to what you sound like, and then take notes. And then the second time you watch it on mute and see what your body language looks like. Decide if you like how your body language looks. And then the third is to transcribe it and see where all of your filler words come up. Yep. So you can hopefully eliminate them. And he has really, really great tips. And I think that the more that you rehearse, the more natural everything just sounds, and people just respond to that so well. So
I want to make sure that people are hearing the planning piece of what you're saying, because I do think, especially with executive directors in planning the program, that's often been treated as a plug and play. We have this program and you're going to have 3 to 12 minutes. Let's not have 12.
No.
But people give them a slot, and the executive director goes off in private and comes up with whatever their talking points are going to be, and then show up at the event without taking into consideration what's come before, what's coming after, and that all of these pieces are actually working in tandem together. And so making them a part of the planning and understanding that runway and the practice piece too is that requires a conversation that could achieve some vulnerability, and that's a relationship you want to cultivate with the people that you have on stage so that you can help set them up for success and what that looks like.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if when we talk about sort of other speakers on stage, the unsung hero to me often is the MC. Can you talk a little bit about how you all utilize that role and how it is that person can actually connect back to an organization's mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the Fundraising Event Company, we like to think of MCs as the person that's holding your hand throughout the program, right? They're the connective tissue between everything that's happening in your program. MCs often end up being board members, which is totally fine. If you have a board member who has a good connection, good stage presence, by all means. But if you're thinking in terms of, speaker diversity, like Ryan was talking about earlier, you might want to consider some staff, volunteers, maybe even sponsors.
Yeah.
If you have longtime sponsors, why not ask them? It's a third-party validator that comes in and basically is endorsing the work that you're doing. I would also say that it could be an opportunity for people who have shared their story, their impact story. Maybe they've had an experience through your nonprofit. They're a former participant or a client, and they really love sharing their story. They really loved recording their video. They liked being on stage. Maybe this is a new opportunity for them to be involved with the organization in a different way.
Yeah.
And so that's a really great way to think about it. And I always advocate anytime a speaker takes the stage, I love to create some kind of connection to the mission, no matter what their role is, no matter how small it is. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be, an hour-long story about how they're connected. But a couple of paragraphs that talk a little bit about this is why this mission resonates with me. Because at the end of the day, we're all supporting nonprofits because we care about their mission.
Yeah.
So why not highlight the different ways we're all intersecting with that?
Yeah, it allows people to see a diversity of support and a diversity of stories of support that may be a different inroad for them. As sitting there, they may really connect with your MC and whatever that story is. I think it's great.
Do you have any qualifiers you look for to say, yes, they would be a good MC?
For an MC?
Yeah.
I mean, outgoing is helpful. It's not a must, but you need someone who can be quick on their feet.
Yeah.
Somebody who's not afraid to sort of take chances, I would say, but also doesn't take too many chances.
Sticks to a script.
Yeah, sticks to a script. Yep. Understands that role and takes it seriously. And really, honestly, anyone that's just visibly passionate about the work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you can feel it, right? You can see it. So.
Yeah, I've seen MCs that have been the whole diversity, board member, sponsor, client. We had an organization that wanted to highlight their students, and it was a student as MC. But universally, that comfort of being on a microphone is so important. The worst MCs can still be awesome if they're comfortable being on a microphone.
Yeah.
As soon as you get that hint of discomfort, it's I'm not sure why I'm here, So that comfort level, I always think is such an important element. I also think that they are a key element because so often our executive directors, our clients that get up on stage and bravely share their story, walk off after finishing their speech and forget that there's something coming. And that MC fills that gap and keeps everything moving forward. Well, Mary, you talked about at the beginning, the shift that you've seen this year has been less attrition. I want to ask you to speak a little bit to how important it is for us to understand who's in our room and just a little bit about understanding the guest list so you can make informed decisions about your guest experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So understanding your guest list really communicates to your audience that we are expecting you. You belong here.
Yeah.
We want you here.
That's powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
That's what people need.
Yep.
People need that in every aspect of their life. But if they feel that at your event, you've got them for life.
Yeah.
And the way you do that, so that's your goal. You want to make them feel like they belong. The way you do that is through strong relationships and details and organization.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is set up for yourself strong relationships with your table hosts and your sponsors. Yeah. That's going to be key because those are the names. If you're in event planning and you're in charge of the guest list and collecting all that information, you know that in the last 2 days of the event, you're scrambling trying to find all of those names and all of those details. Well, you can get ahead of that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be scrambling at the end. So if you have a strong relationship with your sponsors and your table hosts, you can start gathering that information sooner, or give them a template to use to say, this is the information I need from you. I need their name. Are they partnered with anyone that's attending? Do they have dietary restrictions? Do they need any accessibility needs like ASL interpretation?
Yep.
All of that information. What is their email address? You want to be able to communicate with these folks so that they can feel like they belong at the event. Because if they come to the event not knowing what's going on, how do I get there? Where am I parking? What am I eating? Should I eat beforehand? Should I not? So all of those things, tell your guest at the event, you belong here. We want you here.
So it is not a table of Amy and 9 guests of Amy's.
Right. That's right. Exactly. You want to set up some systems for yourself. So whether that's through your event software platform or a spreadsheet or whatnot, you really want to. So when I start helping our clients organize their guest list, I create a system. So it's whatever system that works best for that particular event. And it could mean a variety of different things. But the things that I collect are still the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's their name, it's their email address, it's their partnerships if they're attending, it's their dietary needs. All of that stuff needs to go into a main area where they can access that for catering needs or for accessibility needs, communicating to the various vendors that need to know this information. And once that, and your registration vendors. So we love using some partners, life event staffing, streamlined support. These are some folks who we utilize on site at events, and we also are there to run that check-in desk. That's a really important area. So all those details get funneled into that check-in desk. So when that person comes up and checks in, they feel like they belong. They don't have to fill out a form.
You're a guest of Amy 14.
Yes, exactly. Right. No, my name is not Amy, guest of so-and-so. My name is Mary Elizabeth. And do you even know me?
Yeah.
So that's really the goal. Those details and those relationships you have with folks, that's the means to the goal of saying to the person, you belong here.
Love it.
And the way that informs that decisions, that's going to help you understand capacity in your room. So not only like head count, meals, things like that, physical tables in the room, so how your room is laid out. It also informs who is physically in the room, which is what is their capacity for giving, or what is their capacity for, are they volunteers? Are they people who support you in different ways? How do they support you? You know that because you're on development. Check-in doesn't necessarily need to know that, but you know that in advance. And that way you can make some informed decisions around your appeal strategy. You're collecting those donations so you can really make a difference in that fundraising effort during the event. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to say is that if you also know who is in the room, that really affects the energy in the room. It affects the energy. It creates a magic. There's connections. If you know that this person is here and this person is here and they know each other, but they don't know they're coming, it creates this cool connection that can then also impact fundraising and impact not just fundraising, because I think it's also like the gathering, the magic of the gathering impacts people and their lives and what they walk away with, those 2 or 3 things. If they walk away feeling like, I felt really seen, I felt like it was comfortable, I knew 2 people, but I felt like I belonged, and they had the right meal for me. All of that makes a difference in their experience and in that gathering. And it exponentially, for the whole room to feel that way, magical.
Yeah. And sometimes there's an opportunity there to see who's not in the room.
Yep.
Right. Which, to your point about impacts the vibe and it impacts the emotional connection and the energy of the room is there a key person missing? And does a quick phone call or email solve maybe just like a gap in communication that's been happening?
Yes.
So I think that is a critical element to understanding your guest list, who's in the room. It helps you with your planning and details. But you also said attrition has been down. So how does all of this impact attrition?
Yeah, I think that attrition goes down if you provide attendees with an environment of belonging.
Yeah, I think that's right.
They won't want to miss your event.
Yeah.
They want to be there.
Well, you also said email address, which is something that, I think you all do so well, which is prior to an event, you put together a communication that Paul Zach would call a staging communication. It helps people to understand through staging what is expected of them. And that creates a sense of belonging and connection and ability to do more and lean in and participate.
Yeah.
That communication often has in it all of the things that they need to know, what to expect, what they're going to be eating, what to wear, where to park, how to get there. That, I think, is a key element to why this work of, I call it shaking the trees, like calling every host and continuing to solicit those names impacts what you're able to do at the event and also reduces the no-shows at your event.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree.
You have an interesting example of an event recently where the request that we received for a dietary need was completely different than anything we'd ever seen before. And the thing that I loved about it is it didn't just pass your sort of your radar and go, oops, this is someone who's going to have to figure out different alternatives.
Yeah.
You were actually able to coordinate with catering team and get them a specialty meal, which, as the planner, I'm like, I don't have time to figure out a specialty meal, but the catering team did. Yeah. And they were able to connect her, and her response was, wow, this is so valuable because she frequently moves through the world unseen without that connection of belonging, without the ability to actually fully participate in an event. So those systems, I think, make a big difference.
Yeah.
Well, what does the ideal timeline look like in order to get that sort of guest list and in order to make sure that you're able to sort of do the driving instead of letting the event drive you?
Yeah. So I'm going to piggyback off what Jenna said. We really like to start planning 10 to 12 months in advance. Yep. That way you can get the ball rolling. You can get, similar to what Ryan was saying, get into the budgets of your corporate sponsors, get into that budget cycle so you can make those informed decisions about different things. Start planning early and then finish planning early. So what I mean by that is make some key decisions along the way. Don't just brainstorm for 5 months, right? So if you start planning 10 months out, you can brainstorm a bit, but let's start making some decisions. And then as far as guest list goes, we really you can start from the beginning. So as soon as you create your ticketing site, for those folks who are going to buy individual tickets, create a form that they're going to give you, like they're going to give you information back with all the information you need up front. Yeah. So even if you don't know the exact meals you're going to have, you can create something like, I need meat and vegan. Like you can have just those two options and start collecting that right away. For folks that you're gathering information from, for table hosts and sponsors, you can start, like I said, we've been seeing a little bit later confirmations. So like 4 weeks out is when you're going to start going hard on this, I would say. 6 weeks is good, but like sometimes sponsors don't have guest names by then. So it's usually starting around the 4 week mark, 4 weeks before the event. That's when you're going to start. Hopefully you've already started the relationship. Like I said, the relationship starts much earlier. That way you can call up Amy and be like, hey, who are your 10 guests? I don't have them yet. I don't know who's coming. Okay, great. Well, here's an easy form that you can fill out when you have them as you get them. Give them the tools. Give them the tools that they need. So it makes it easy. And then you're going to be just constantly reaching out again, just every week, shaking the trees. That way your event is not driving you. You are driving the event.
Especially for our corporate partners. Our corporate partners are often sponsoring
so busy
dozens of events in one season. So continuing to stay on their radar and giving them tools is a really good way to make sure they come back. Make it easy for them. Sure. Well, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to hear more from Ryan. We'll be right back.
Unleash the power of events to energize your donors and amplify your mission. Join us at the Elevate Conference in 2025, where you'll learn the essential tools for planning a successful fundraising event. Book your tickets now for March 12th and 13th. This dynamic hybrid conference hosted at Avenue in Portland, Oregon, and streamed live for our virtual audience, will equip you with practical tools, demos, and templates that you can put to work immediately. Don't miss out. Secure your spot today at Elevate 2025. Visit elevatenonprofit.com to register now. Elevate Conference 2025 is brought to you by Swaim Strategies and the AV Department, powered by elevatenonprofit.com.
All right, welcome back. We're excited to be here with the Fundraising Event Company to talk about changes we've seen, what the evolution of fundraising events look like, how we can be more intentional about gathering folks and really building movements. On movement building, Ryan, can you talk to us a little bit about hybrid events? This is something that we've seen really evolve in the past few years, especially post-COVID, and talk a little bit about what opportunities that can open up for an organization.
Sure, happy to. So simply a hybrid event is an in-person gathering that's simultaneously streamed to an online audience. And we hope to create infrastructure that spans the chasm between the online audience and the guest at home, so they feel more a part of the program, such as a chat feature or captions or other accessibility pieces, and the ability to donate. So that's something that we've continued to be thinking about with the hybrid events. How do we bring those audiences as close to each other as possible?
And so in the hybrid setting, there have been big wins that we've seen about sort of that access being created. Is there a situation where you would say you should definitely be considering a hybrid event? Like when you're working with clients and thinking ahead about whether or not they should be doing hybrid, is there a qualifier for you in that making that recommendation?
Yeah, I think there's two that come to mind immediately. If you're a statewide or national organization and you have a singular in-person gathering that's around a population center, but you have folks that you interact with across whatever territory that you occupy, I think that's an easy option, and it's a way to show the breadth of your service area when you could have people tuning in from all across that. And then secondarily, if there's folks that are near and dear to the organization's heart that just can't interact with events anymore as a gathering piece, but still want to feel like they're involved. And a hybrid event's a great way. We've had several, even this fall, we've had several organizations tell us that they had 2 or 3 folks that have just sort of aged or abilitied out of events, but they were super excited to be included in the event this year because they offered a hybrid element to their event.
So does hybrid change the planning at all as far as timing, timeline, what folks need to be thinking about with hybrid?
Yes and no. I want to piggyback on something that Mary said, and I think that there's a lot of wisdom to this. It's more about finishing early, because we really want to get deliverables to your production team or to your streaming partner, so they have ample time to build all those wonderful, what seem on the other day of the event to be seamless production pieces. That takes time. So it's really, about finishing earlier. And then my advice, if you're doing a hybrid event for the first time, find a really good streaming partner who's been doing this a lot and ask them for what they need or prefer to be able to produce the event, and then just work backwards from those pieces. They're going to tell you exactly what they prefer to have from as far as information or infrastructure that you can provide them.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about our partner because they're amazing. The AV department, who also supports our podcast, is our live stream hybrid event production partner. And the thing that's unique about them that I love in working with them is that they really understand that this is not just a broadcast event, but it's a fundraising event. So they understand the tools and mechanisms of fundraising, which I don't know that all production live stream companies do, but they're familiar with all the the thermometer tools. They're familiar with all the elements that help sort of, like you said, Ryan, span that gap. And so I think that...
Span the chasm.
Yeah, span the chasm.
That's the
It's bigger than a gap.
That is the t-shirt right there. Well, and I think too, getting folks to think about, and I think this is where partners become really important, we're not talking about putting a GoPro in the rafters looking down from 900 miles away at a party going on in a room you're not a part of.
Right.
That's not how we're defining a hybrid event, right? We're talking about how do we tie two potential audiences together and make them feel like they are occupying a moment together, albeit differently and through different avenues, but that they are having an experience of this organization's mission together. Jenna, event program comes to play in this a lot. So when you're thinking about event program, videos, speakers, what are pieces you're thinking about, maybe in addition to when you're thinking about them being utilized for a hybrid event?
For sure. So if you think about what's the purpose behind doing a hybrid event, right? The purpose is to create accessibility and belonging.
Yep.
So you're going to need ways to bring in the at-home audience to the room.
Yeah.
And like you were just saying, if you put a camera up in the corner, it wouldn't make people feel like they belong at all.
Right.
So what are the opportunities that we can use to engage? Some of the things we really love to do are chat windows, just because that's a super simple way add-on feature, especially if you're working with the AV department. We oftentimes, too, if we have some kind of interactive element happening at the party itself, for example, one of our spring clients had a wishing tree, and everyone wrote down what their wish was for somebody staying at their shelter. And we found a way to get folks who are also at home an opportunity to submit their own wishes for it, and then someone wrote it down and hung it on the tree for them. And then at the end of the program, we read some of them aloud.
That's great.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that everyone got a chance to be heard, right? Everyone wants to participate in that kind of thing. I would also say that when you're thinking about engagement opportunities, if you can think about directing your speakers to address the camera whenever possible, right? So it's not just, hey, welcome everybody to this event. It's welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're so glad you're here. That makes people feel like they're in the room. Another thing that the AV department does really great in partnership with one of our favorite auctioneers, Dale Johannes from DC Auctions, is Dale will literally jump off of the stage and get into the room and run around, and Shannon chases him with the camera, and it makes the person that's at home feel like I'm part of this too.
Yeah.
And not to mention, people that are in the room are on the camera and they see themselves and they're like, oh, okay, I'll raise my paddle too. So sometimes, it helps with that. I would say throw in a pre-show message that you can live record at the party.
Yeah.
This is also a dual purpose because it shows people what's kind of going on before the program.
Yeah.
But it also gives you an opportunity to explain all of the logistical information that people in the venue don't care about, but maybe people at home need to know about, like, here's our tech support line, there's a chat window, share your wish, whatever those things might be.
Yeah.
We always think about scripting for both audiences too. So just whenever you can think about like transitions that help. And then one of Ryan's favorites is making sure there's no dead air in between speakers.
Yeah.
We don't want someone to leave the podium and then wait 10 to 15 seconds before someone shows up again. So I'm constantly next to the stage, like, start walking up. You can go, because we want that transition to happen immediately. So
you just inferred something, but I want to say it explicitly for folks.
Sure.
Which is you inferred that you are not broadcasting the party. And I want to explicitly just share the content of the program from the point you say, welcome, and you begin your program is the broadcast. Because I think it can actually have the opposite effect if you are broadcasting something people can't be a part of. But like if you've ever attended a celebration of some sort that was broadcast, or you've been in the home viewing audience of something like the Academy Awards, the Grammy Awards, we're not watching all the parties, but we are seeing some of those red carpet interviews. And that's something that I think, to your point of that pre-message that shows a little snapshot about what's going on, but isn't asking the guests at home to sit and watch an hour of people socializing.
of what they're missing out on.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So just
Or the dance party afterward.
Right.
Awkward.
Yeah, awkward, weird. All right. Well, Mary, I want to know a little bit about systems and platforms that you use specifically to hybrid. So you are the systems expert. You are all about finding the way to make it work for the particular project, for the particular client, and best fit their needs. What are the systems and tools that need to be in place in order to do a hybrid event?
Yeah. So there's two areas that you really need to make sure that the two audiences are brought together. And one is the experience, which Ryan and Jenna so lovely just explained how to do that in the experience. But then there's the fundraising bit.
Yeah.
So the fundraising part, it's really important to also bring those two audiences together. And there's a couple of things that you need to make sure that you have in place to make that happen seamlessly. And one happens in the collection of the fundraising, and the other happens as part of the common goal. Okay. So first of all, the collection. So during the collection, you've got people giving in the room and people giving online.
Okay.
So there's a couple of mechanisms happening here. People giving in the room typically are going to be using like a bid paddle. That's what we would recommend if that's, people want to be recognized. It goes into fundraising strategy. So they raise that paddle. We have maybe some pre-committed gifts in the room who we know paddles going up, and we're building that momentum in the room. We're going level by level. And those names are recognized of the pre-commits, and those numbers are recognized. And then also at the same time, so the auctioneer, this is something that you're going to have to work with your auctioneer on, is helping them understand, first collect those gifts in the room.
Yeah.
Then move to the online givers.
Yeah.
So there has to be a way for the people online to give. And the way that usually happens is through an online form. And they can get to that online form, that online donation form, through a QR code, through a code that they text. So they can text a code and get that link back, or maybe the page that they're watching the event on, it's right on that page.
Yeah,
you can
embed.
There's a donate button, or there's something embedded right below, like the viewing window. Sometimes that's helpful. There's different mechanisms that they can use, but the important part is they're donating, and then that shows up for the auctioneer to also have on a screen or on an iPad or something where they can recognize those gifts in real time as they come in. Right after they recognize the gifts in the room, they can turn and say, now let's look at some online gifts. Yep. We have so-and-so giving it $50. Even if you're at the $1,000 level, that's fine. Yep. Just recognize those gifts that are coming in.
Yeah.
So that's the collection part. The more important and exciting part for me that I like to do, that I like to be a part of, is the common goal. Mm-hmm. So meaning we're all working towards one purpose, and that's to raise $100,000, $1 million, whatever that goal is. Name that goal. Have a thermometer. Sam mentioned this a little bit previously. Have a thermometer, and we're all working towards that goal. Mm-hmm. So the mechanism behind this can get kind of complicated if you're like, how do I do this? So there's different tools out there. But what you basically want to do is have a thermometer that you can have online gifts go into automatically, and it raises it. And then the in-room gifts, your team is adding those gifts in the back end, and it raises it. Mm-hmm. So after each level, it goes up a little more, goes up a little bit more. And everyone's like, oh, I can give that more. And they're seeing it happen in real time.
Yeah.
So marrying those two audiences for that common goal is what you're after.
Yep.
Because then not only the in-room people, they're excited and their excitement's building, but the online folks, their excitement's building because that thermometer's going up, and then it hits that goal and the confetti happens online. If you're working with the AV department or another AV team, they can create that little confetti effect online, and that everyone cheers. So there's some inner workings underneath happening, but it doesn't have to be too complicated. You just have to choose some of the right tools, and there's a bunch of them out there.
Yeah. What I think is fascinating, too, to think about that sometimes in the room we forget when we're fundraising or a part of fundraising in the room is that when your fundraising host turns to, let's recognize some of these gifts online, all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, this event just actually went out of the room. And that's that collective piece. So I think being really deliberate about acknowledging those pieces not only helps people at home feel seen as donors, it makes them feel seen as part of the event. That's, hey, wait, they're talking about us on the stage. And then when I'm sitting in the room, I'm like, oh my gosh, right, this is big. Some of us are forgetting that there's a camera roving around and broadcasting us out to the people. But I think that's really critical to have those audiences continually being in space together and making that clear to them so that they remember each other, so that common goal really takes on that bigger purpose of goodwill.
Exactly.
And connection.
And people are always asking, how do I make a hybrid event feel like an event to someone sitting at home? How do I make that happen for that person? We've named a few things, but I think this is one of the main things that does make them feel like they're part of it, and that they're not just like sitting at home watching a party happening without them.
No, it feels like I'm punching a bunch of stuff into a screen
and you see your name.
And I see my name, but then when my name also gets said on stage, like you
want to give again, so it doesn't again.
And
And
people
we've seen
do.
that happen.
People do all the time. Yeah.
Well, so for folks who just heard what you said and got overwhelmed,
Yep.
because
I
that's
know.
a whole layer of technology, right? There's a couple of really basic things I want to offer folks.
Yeah.
One is that there are people out there that are experts.
Yep.
Mary, you are an expert in this sector. People should be contacting you simply just to say, how do I do this?
Yep.
Here's my tool. Tell me what to do.
Exactly. Yep.
But the second thing is that all of the tools out there, when I say tools, I mean the software platforms used for event planning, One Cause, Greater Giving, Give Butter, Paybe. There's so many different tools out there.
Yep.
All of these tools invested a ton of time and resource into virtual fundraising and hybrid fundraising during the pandemic.
Yeah, for
if
sure.
you use a tool that did not do that evolution, you probably are using a very outdated tool.
Yep.
But most tools invested in some sort of easy resource to tie those audiences together. Knowing how to do that is
Right.
people contact you or the AV department as a resource to get a better understanding. But there are so many easy ways. And what we've learned is we can have audiences tuned in from all over the globe be seen, recognized, get a sense of belonging and connection simply by utilizing the fact that software has evolved.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think that, as a planner, figuring out how to do that can be overwhelming, but there's
sure.
low cost, easy resources
There are.
out there that can help you to do that.
Yep.
So I encourage folks, if you're thinking about doing this, get a little coaching to be able to feel like it's
Yeah.
not overwhelming.
Exactly.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to get on the fundraising elevator.
Ready to take your fundraising to the next level? Need to get unstuck in your event planning? Now's your chance to connect directly with the experts behind the fundraising elevator. Book a one-on-one consulting session with Sam for strategic planning and fundraising strategy, with Kristen for your program and storytelling, or Mary for your registration and data tools. They're here to provide you personalized answers to all your event questions. Don't wait. Raise more at your next fundraising event. Book your session today at elevatenonprofit.com. You can also find the link in the show notes.
Welcome back to the Fundraising Elevator. We are here with the Fundraising Event Company, 3 amazing humans out there doing the good work for our nonprofit partners. Jenna and I were talking at the break about scripting for hybrid events, and she brought up a couple of pieces that I think are super important for folks to hear. Jenna, what were we chatting about?
So one of the main components we like to think of for hybrid events, making sure that it's really easy for folks to tune in online. Charge for the tickets to join in person, make it free to tune in online, make it super simple, email them the link 300 times if you have to. Probably not 300, they won't like that. But make sure you send it, the day of the event to make sure that they can just click in and get straight to it. I will add a caveat that depending on the mission, we might this year need to think about password protected hybrid events.
Yeah.
Just because we don't want people coming in that aren't supposed to be there. So that could also be an option. And I think that that's a relatively easy thing that your AV team can help with.
Yep. I
would add to that too, the chat moderation.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going.
Yeah. I think we always recommend that you have volunteers that are engaging with your audience in the chat, but you may also want on the back end your AV team to be watching and removing anyone that is inappropriately behaving because that's always a concern.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Okay, it's time.
Let's
jump in the fundraising elevator where we're all headed up. We ask everybody who comes on the show to offer a tool or a piece of sage advice for fundraising superheroes out there so that they can keep heading up. Jenna, let's start with you. What would you offer folks?
Mine's going to surprise you. Mine's all about embracing Sonder.
Love it.
And
Love
storytelling.
Love it.
Just lean as much as you can into centering dignity and humanity and respect. Especially this year, let's just be kind to each other and consider what it's like, the experience might be like for someone else. Just be in their shoes for a minute. And I like to think about, too, when you're inviting someone, especially to tell stories on behalf of your organization or their connection, remember that is a huge gift.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can figure out ways to not just help them tell their story and give them a platform to do it, but also protect them. Meaning if they decide at any point that they don't want to, then they can absolutely bow out and there's no harm, no foul. So the more that we can continue to uplift ethical storytelling and just empowering people through storytelling, I think the better off we all will be. And I think we're all going to benefit from some kindness for sure.
I think that's perfect. Mary, how about you?
Yeah. Okay. So my tip, like I mentioned earlier, strong relationships combined with details and organization can help you make your guests feel like they belong. So my tip is find ways to automate your details and organization. Mm-hmm. So gathering guest information can get daunting. Find ways to automate that. And that can be through your event platform. Mm-hmm. It can be through your through a Google form.
Yeah.
I actually combined in one of my events this past year, I combined ticket information on Eventbrite and sponsor and guest information on Google Forms. And then I combined them into one. And, this doesn't get you off the hook of being in relationship, though.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So that's the key part.
But automation gives you the time.
It should liberate you. It actually should liberate you to be in a relationship.
Yes.
That's right.
So start planning early and finish planning early.
Wow. All right. Ryan, what would you offer?
As all good advice is usually stolen from someone else, I want to reiterate just what Mary just said. Plan early, finish early. And the reason why anymore, we're sort of in a chaotic time around day of event time. So if you finish the doing early, you can focus on the people. And that's really the most important thing. And you're going to reap way bigger benefits from focusing on the people than on the doing. That last comma or semicolon that you missed is not as important as one more phone call. So finish early, focus on the people, and then have 2 or 3 takeaway messages for your audience, and then build from those messages all the way back into your marketing copy. Have that be something that's indelible. When everyone leaves your event, it's guaranteed that they know those 2 or 3 takeaway messages.
Love it.
Well,
I need to say that I stole that from Ryan. So Ryan, back at you.
It's an exchange.
It was an exchange.
I love it.
But I think the plan early, start early, finish early also allows for us to be more responsive without it causing total upset and chaos, because we are in this really quickly evolving world, similar to pandemic lockdown times. I think we're in this world where it might be different tomorrow than it was today. And if you have your plans in place, I think it allows us to be responsive in a thoughtful, easy way that isn't, oh my God, I'm too busy, I can't take one more thing. And then allows us to be thoughtful about those communications. And that's why you need partners. You need experts on your team. You need people that are helping you. You need trusted advisors. Some organizations need all the resources to help them be able to move forward. And some organizations just need a little advice, a little recommendation around creating the best system, or how to move your sponsors, or move that needle with your guests, or help with your storytelling. So we are huge fans of you all. We are so honored to be in partnership with you all and to be doing this work with you all every day. How do people get a hold of you, Mary, if folks are just looking for resource about moving their event forward in this crazy time?
We would love for you to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We are at Fundraising Event Co. And then our website, you can sign up for our newsletter, which will be starting soon. And that's at fundraisingeventco.com. So it's all Fundraising Event Co. You can find us out there, follow us, sign up. We're excited.
We will put links to all of those pieces in the show notes for today's episode. We so appreciate that you are out there partnering with folks on the ground to get what needs be done so that they can focus on relationships. I think the chicken, whether you do it 10 months in advance or 2 weeks in advance, is not going to change. That's not going to impact. But what folks can do to create an experience where folks belong, where people are seen and heard, where their stories are shared in a respectful, ethical way. That's what's going to be the difference for all of us being in space together.
And for our friends that are following along, if you want more wisdom from this awesome team, they will be at Elevate. So we hope that you'll join us March 12th and 13th. And in the meantime, I hope everyone continues to take care of each other, offer kindness. Thank you, Jenna. Such a key point. And Ryan, to your note earlier, find the joy. Make sure you find the joy. Have a great day, everyone.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV Department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson, Heidi Christensen, and Adam Breeden. Video production by Shannon Doran. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. Marketing by Lisa Aragon. Support from Mary Elizabeth, Todd Campbell, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett, and voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Hey y'all, it's Kristen. Before we leave, I want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, follow, and subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, share it with a friend. Leave us a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thanks so much for being here and tuning in.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.